Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur or busy individual looking for self-care ideas, you're in the right place.
And we can't wait to share our experiences with you.
When you're starting a business, it feels like everybody's like, so what's your niche?
Yeah.
What's your niche? What's your focus? What's going on? And man, like as a newish entrepreneur, I still get a little overwhelmed by this.
Right? And there's some people that don't really know what a niche and or niche.
Yeah. Niche or niche, tomato,
Right? In the comments, let us know how you say it.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like it's kind of one of those things where people think that they have a niche, but they don't actually have a niche either. Like, oh, I'm in graphic design. That's a niche.
Right.
No.
It's like,
It's a little
that's
bit
like
more.
me saying, I'm a coach.
You're just
That's
a
my
coach.
niche.
Yeah.
My niche is coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's more than that.
Yeah. So like we may have some people very confused right now.
Yeah.
If they've never heard of what a niche is. So maybe we should start there.
Yeah, most likely.
Okay. You want to tell us what one is?
Sure. So a business niche is a specialized or focused area of a broader market that businesses can serve to differentiate themselves from the competition. So business owners should find a niche in their industry that has an underserved or unmet needs within their industry.
Okay.
And that is from Business News Daily. So I did not write that.
Not taking the credit.
Not taking the credit for that one because definitely not. But yeah, so it's just it's differentiating yourself from the competition. And
Right.
we talk a lot about that in branding, especially is what's your MVP, what's your most valuable perspective in the market as well.
I like that.
And so often niches can kind of get overlooked at times, which I think is kind of interesting because it's really scary. Like, it's really scary to do as a business.
It's scary and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll start with talking about it in a scary way because it's like my big scare is, well, if I say that I specifically want to work with this type of person with this kind of problem who lives in this place, whatever, that I'm narrowing it down so much that I'm never going to get the number of clients that I need to make the money I need to make to have this be my full-time income.
Yeah.
That's kind of terrifying.
Oh, it's ridiculously terrifying. And then you also don't want to pigeonhole yourself as well, too. Right?
Yeah.
And, like, that's scary in itself because, like, what if you decide that you really like doing a little bit of this aspect and then you've already branded yourself as this person?
Right.
It's so much harder to then change up the way you're telling your story of your brand.
Especially if you did a good job of branding.
Exactly.
Some people, it's like, oh, they wouldn't even notice. But yeah, if you like really narrowed in right away, branded really well, got your message out there and everyone's like, okay, you're known as this type of person. And then, yeah, you want to explore outside of that. That could be really difficult. It could be challenging. Like that imposter syndrome could poke its ugly little head too, right? Because you're like, well, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, who am I to start now doing this over on the side here? Will people even believe that I'm capable of it? Like, it's just a crazy spiral effect that could come up.
Exactly. And I think something that you talk about a lot in coaching too is like that scarcity mindset. Especially like if I turn all these people away, will I therefore not get any of the monies? Will I be a business that goes bankrupt or... You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hello, living below the line.
Yeah. But on the flip side of that scarcity mindset, there is the other aspect where when you niche, you can actually charge a lot more because you are positioning yourself, therefore, as the expert in this one thing and you do this thing really, really well.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I know the back end is everything. You know, so usually people are willing to, people are willing to pay more for people that they know that are going to handle it and get the job done right the first time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I've kind of wanted to always niche personally. And I'm already kind of thinking of something that I want to niche towards. But like, it's scary because right now I don't have a niche. I do the websites, I do the branding, I do I do all the things. I even do social media.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I once had someone come up to me and I told them that I could do something and they're like, oh, I thought you were just a graphic designer. And I was like, no, I do a lot of things. And I could see how my messaging has become quite, it's a lot. You know, like when you think of the daily consumer, they're going onto websites. And if you have all this mixed messaging, it's so hard for the end person to figure out exactly what it is that you're offering.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And how much
Absolutely.
easier it is to have your message if you have a set niche, for example.
Yeah. Well, it's that saying, it's like if you're trying to talk to everybody, you're talking to nobody.
Exactly.
Right? So without a niche, then you're talking in such broad terms because you're trying to attract everybody out there.
Exactly.
And then it's just falling on deaf ears because you're not really like hitting like what is that pain point that they have, what is that solution that they're looking for. It's just like, here's what I do, kind of. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But when you niche, it's just like smack. You hit them right in the face with what you've got, and they're like, yes, I need that, and I'm willing to pay whatever they're charging for it because they are speaking directly to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, how do you even figure out what that is?
Oh, man. Well, I do have we can go through it a little bit soon.
Yeah, you have like a
I have like
guide for us.
a little guide, and it's kind of funny because when you think about niching, it's actually really close to defining your brand in a sense, and like your specifically your brand positioning, because again, it's what you are to the customers. And so often, like, I've heard some people that they think that they have a really outlandish or weird niche, but it was actually something that's needed that has never been done. So then people do it, and then all of a sudden they're making a lot of money, and then that's when you get like the competitors and stuff like that too. So I think that's kind of interesting as well, is that sometimes, again, it is scary because usually if you find a really cool niche, people aren't doing it. Sometimes like there's so many people online having businesses nowadays, there's probably said niche. But something before we get into that too that I kind of wanted to do as a little side note, niching is really hard when you're in a smaller community. Like I find it's like when I was living in Edmonton, it's so much easier to niche because there's a larger market. You know what I mean? But then when you're somewhere like in PEI where it's a little island, you can't niche on island. You have to make sure that you have marketing that's going outside, more global.
Right.
Because, like, so for example, if I'm opening up a convenience store and my niche is kawaii, you know what I mean? There's probably not a lot of kawaii people on PEI. And the ones that do, like, it's such a small market.
Right.
Whereas if you're in a bigger city, your chances are there's a larger demographic. You know what I mean? That's why if you go to places like large cities, they have specific chains of restaurants that do small individual things that are unique. Whereas when you come to places like this, a lot of things are more broad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so that's something to keep in mind, too, if you're listening and you're in a small city or town. Or small province or state, for a few Americans out there.
And I guess that would then, well, I guess it depends on, do you do things just in person versus are you available online? What does that look like? And then that would all factor into how you determine what your niche is too, right? Like,
exactly.
Because if you only did like a convenience store, right? Like a brick and mortar, like people have to come to it to purchase from you. Obviously, you'd want to be a little bit broader if you're in a very small place.
Exactly.
But if you were an online store, you could be more niched as long as you had the right marketing and stuff behind it so that people could find you anywhere.
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
So, like, for example, when something that I've always wanted to niche to, and again, I'm super authentic on this thing, so I'm going to pretty much tell you guys all the ideas in my head. But I've always wanted to niche to just helping wellness brands specifically. So like yoga studios and, you know, the hippie side of things, but on their branding websites and stuff like that. So I'm still be doing a broad aspect of things, but I'm only niching onto one theme, right? And there's some people that do that. I think you said that the people that you go through for the website, for Lisa Chandler coaching, like that's a specific coach. She does coaching websites.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for women coaches who are over 40. Like, she's very specific.
She's very specific. She's very niched, right? Yeah. And so I've always wanted to do something like that. But the problem is I couldn't do that here because there is quite a few wellness brands. But in smaller places like PEI, there's a lot more community spread. So, like, for example, someone probably knows someone that's a designer, so you might not be first in mind. Right? And secondly, even if you are first in mind, there's not going to be that many people possibly in the wellness industry. You know what I mean? Whereas if I change out my marketing, I could go globally.
Yes.
Right? And that's another thing too, like, global marketing is very different than local marketing. Like, I know how to locally market and I'm good at it. But, like, doing it for the globe is a little bit more intimidating. And it's funny because there's a lot of other people that are doing it really well already. You know what I mean? So then there's that imposter syndrome of, I can't actually do this. Like,
right. How could I ever compete with them?
How could I do? Like, no one's... And then, again, like, that would change my whole entire brand as Summer Street Creative, because right now I'm branded as a, you know, bright, I'll do everything and don't have to worry about anything with me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's so scary. But yeah, I always get held back of, like, is there actually money of it in a smaller province? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, like, a mindset that we need to get past as well, right?
Yeah.
Where we're just, like, limiting ourselves before we even put it out there. I mean,
Exactly.
obviously, if you're taking a niche or choosing a niche.
Yeah. Take a niche.
Just take one. Just take one. They're up for grabs.
Yeah.
You might want to do some market research. You might want to understand, you know, what is out there that's available. Who are you targeting? What does that look like? Who are they currently working with, if anybody? So there's a lot of things that you'd want to look at in the background too. But yeah, I could see where that, you know, getting that specific in a smaller region, especially if you want to work locally, could be a challenge for sure.
Oh, exactly.
But then it's, and then if you don't, it's just like, okay, so who do people really know what I can do? And then also, are you working with the clients that really excite you?
Yeah.
Or are you just working with whoever stumbles upon you?
Exactly. And, like, the thing is, too, when you're first starting, though, sometimes it is easier just to take what you can get. Again, like, sometimes you have to because, first and foremost, it's also a learning opportunity as well when you do take all the things. Yes. You know, like, right now I know exactly what kind of client I want to work with because I have had the chance to work with a multitude of different client style types in a way, you know what I mean? So now, like, when I interact with someone that I get that gut feeling like that's not going to be a good experience for both of us.
Right.
You know, I know how to walk away from that. But I think that's the thing, like, I wouldn't necessarily just go straight into niching. You know what I mean? Like, I would try a couple things out first and then go into, like, choosing a specific niche.
And you might surprise yourself too if you might cut yourself off from an area that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
Because you don't know that you do because you haven't tried it.
Exactly.
Right? So would you suggest no matter what you do, you should start really broad before you niche? Or I guess there might be different types of industries where you know off the get-go that you're not.
Yeah, like, I think in general, if you don't know what you exactly want to do, obviously start broad. You don't want to just be like, I feel like this market's not really there, so I'm just going to dive into this because it feels kind of sort of right. But it's like, for example, I actually know a few graphic designers that focus just on typography. They did it in school and it just lit them up and they were super excited. So they graduated and they're like, I'm a typography designer and that's all I do.
Wow.
Don't ask me to do a website. Don't ask me to do I'll do a logo if it's typography based, but I'm not going to create certain things, and they're just typography designers. And so, like, they have followers, and as soon as that they, like, release a font or anything like that, they have people already ready to buy. You know what I mean? Because they're already positioning themselves that you exactly know what you're going to get from me. You know what I mean? And sure enough, they can charge a lot of money for a handmade typography based logo. Upwards to like $5,000.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because they have niched themselves. And I think that's like the cool aspect of it too, is that yes, it's scary. Yes, there's kind of an unknown, but if you are really excited about it and you're good at it, you can make so much money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's just finding what is that thing that lights you up too. And that you're going to want to keep doing
and
for a while, I guess. Or,
exactly.
You know.
And it's kind of funny because we even had a Instagram response too, and she basically said that, like, I'm going to pull it up.
Like, what did she say?
What did she say? But yeah, she basically said that she didn't want to feel bored posting about the same thing all the time because it just would get kind of monotonous in a sense because you're just talking about one thing. You know what I mean? And for some people, that might be boring. Like, I would not want to be talking about typography all the time. I need different aspects or things to do.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fair.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we've recently done an episode on astrology and what I've learned about myself. And I know I already knew this, and this just like embedded it in me though, was that I love new projects, but I get bored easily.
Okay.
So I wonder if that's part of my resistance to niching, is that I'm worried that it's like, oh, okay, cool, been there, done that. Like, what's next? And when I look back on my career, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
I get antsy around a certain time frame of doing one particular thing, and I'm ready to like move on if it starts to become very repetitive.
Yeah.
So there's like a little like, ooh, like ding, 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 warning bells for me. What does that look like? But I guess what the question I'm very roundaboutedly way getting to is, if I were to niche, do I have to stick with it forever? Or should you stick with it for a certain amount of time? Like, you don't want to be seen as wishy-washy out there too, right? Like, I don't want to be, you know, today this is my niche, and then 6 months down the road I'm changing it up, and then again and again.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't want people to think like,
she can't make up her mind.
Is it not working? And she's freaking out and changing. Like, is she not giving it enough time? What's going on? I don't know.
That's true. Yeah, that's something I don't really think like too often. I could see that being an issue. What I could see though is like you define your niche and people that you really are trying to attract as like a client or customer first and foremost. So you're just speaking to one person. Right. But then at the same time, like, say if you do get bored of, say, like coaching and doing masterminds and stuff like that, what if then you divert? You're still focusing on the same niche and the same target, but you create a course. So it gives something more exciting. But then it's also just leveling up your expertise in that niche. In a sense too, right? So like you're kind of evolving it, because that's the thing too. Like, I see a lot of time where people will find it like a good niche and they'll stick in it for a while, but they still, you know, mold it a little bit. But it's not like you're just like, oh, I'm gonna be a coach. Then you're like, I'm gonna be a fitness instructor tonight. You know what I mean? Like, you're not. It's the subtle changes. A lot of people don't notice. Like, and that's the biggest thing too. A lot of people are so worried about, oh, they're gonna think this. You know what I mean? Like, guaranteed, if I started tomorrow and just changed up the dialogue on my website to say that I just focused on wellness, I get a couple of concerns. But at the same time, if I kept the same logo, the same name, and I just kind of started changing my messaging just a little bit, slowly but surely, and was more aware, like bringing my clients into it as well and telling them this is the path I'm taking. Right. You know? Because I think that's the thing too. People, we talk about this a lot, is people do want to see the authentic side of it. Right. And yeah, you don't want to be wishy-washy, but I think if you have kind of an intention and a reason behind it, then it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and like, now my brain is like overdrive in the back here, being like, okay, so I can hold this niche, but I can come at it from so many different ways. Right? Oh, exactly. So I'm just like, and that's where the fun of like new projects and things like that could come from for me. So it's not the niche that I'm getting bored of, but if my delivery I'm starting to feel is a little stale, I can just shake that up. Exactly. And then maybe even I come back to what I was doing before, but after I've taken a break from it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just like opened so many things.
And that's the thing, like niching is such a broad term because there's people, again, that niche into a specific task. You know, I just do accounting. I just do taxes on tax season. I just do Pilates, just because we had a recent Pilates episode. Kathleen. You know what I mean? And like, but then there's also the broader where you're doing a couple different things, but you focus on one demographic. So for example, some people niche to, I just work with moms.
Right.
That need whatever moms need.
We're not sure.
We're not sure what do moms need. I'm sure moms
a break, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Or like maybe you have a childcare business, and your thing is that you're niche to people that want their child to be more creative. So you do music. You know, you brand yourself as the music daycare.
Well, that's like Kinder Music.
I don't know.
Do you know about that?
No.
Yeah.
Do I know? But why do I?
Yeah, it's a music like kids like little baby class.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that
Kinder
would be
music, so
that
kind of
would be
like
a
kindergarten, but it's Kinder Music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because then it's something that people are like, oh, that's something that I would really, you know, be like, I will pay more money for that because I want my child to be in that.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah. So there's so many different ways to come at it. So I think, you know, we talked earlier about the scary part, and now we're in the overwhelm part. Yeah. But there's so many ways to go. So how do you know that you're picking the right one?
Right.
That's what I keep getting caught up in, because I think one day I'm like, oh yes, perfect. This is exactly who I want to work with. That's what I want to do. But then I start being like, ooh, is it too narrow? That's what starts coming up for me, instead of just like grabbing onto it and trying it out.
Yeah, that's fair. But I feel like that's like something that you'd have to do some thinking on personally.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because I think that's the thing. Like, so often we do tend to chase the dollars. You know what I mean? Like, so for example, when you look at things like with like mom or children and stuff like that, or even wellness, there's a lot of money in it. You know what I mean? And if you just chase what's most popular, you'll get money right away, but are you going to be happy with it? You know what I mean? But if you niche to something that you're really passionate about and that you can associate with. So for example, it'd be weird for us to be like, you coach, work for moms, because we do not identify with moms currently, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't understand the struggle that they go through on a daily basis. You kind of did today a little bit.
One morning of getting a 3.5-year-old off to preschool was
enough.
I love her so much. But yeah, kudos to parents.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wouldn't make sense for me to be like, this is how you can elevate your life as a mom or a working mom or something.
Exactly.
Because I don't. Yeah, and I get that. But then part of me too is like, but do you have to have lived it to niche it? I guess yes. I'm answering my own question. So I may not niche in it, but if even in the way that I were to brand myself and niche it, if a mom came, it's not like I couldn't coach a mom.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't be my primary focus.
Well, and it also wouldn't light you up. Like, we talk about, like, the law of attraction and manifesting. Like, life is energy. Life is vibrations. If you're not excited to work with moms because you don't understand what they're... Or, like, not that you don't like moms, but you know what I mean? But, like, if it's not something that, like, you wake up and you're like, I'm so excited to work with moms today.
Yeah.
Why would you work with moms?
Yeah, exactly.
Vice versa. If I... So, for example, I'm a vegetarian against animal cruelty. I wouldn't work with someone that their brand is yeah, exactly. that would be like super low vibration for me. I would not be excited to go work.
Yes.
It's against my ethics and against my mission completely.
Yeah.
And like, not that I ever have that kind of work coming in, but it would not make sense in my soul. And I think that's the biggest thing too. Like, sometimes we can get so into our analytical mind about niching and like what you're saying, like, oh, but if I could get this.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I just feel like there's so much opportunity in niching, and like, especially when you're super effective in it and you have a clear defined... I talk about customer profiling, building your customer profile, or some people call it avatars. But when you build those, it's a way to define and how to speak and build your story for your brand, right? So how much easier is it to build one really, really strong customer profile sheet with just one person than it is to build 3. You know what I mean? And so often, like when I would work with startups, we would talk about their different customers, and like you're saying, you can't speak to everyone, and they're like, oh, I definitely have this kind of person, I have this kind of person. And when you're able to tell that clear and defined story, the chances are you don't have to take them through different sales funnels. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Usually they're there and they're like, I'm excited.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so much easier at the end ask, you know? Especially if you are charging a lot of money for what you're doing, right? Like, yeah. It's a way for instant trust in a sense, and to get out of that noise too.
Well, when you're speaking so clearly
Yeah.
to one like person, and they feel like, oh wow, everything they're saying in their marketing or their branding is exactly how I'm feeling, or the thoughts that are running through my head. This is really creepy. I must really need this.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, that looks interesting, but you know, it's not like speaking to their soul.
Exactly.
But going back to what you said earlier too about like what lights you up or what gets you excited, I think even something you could do before you jump into the customer profile or persona, avatar, whatever you want to call it, is getting really clear on your own values.
Yeah.
And what you really love and what you're willing to do, not do, all of that too. And then the two kind of like become this beautiful blend of what you're going to put out to the world, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting. So should we walk through a little bit of like
The guide.
how do we do this? What does this look like?
How to find a niche. Step 1. So yeah, we were already kind of talking about it. Like, what lights you up? What can you spend hours on that makes the time absolutely fly? So I definitely, again, going back to like the holistic approach of it, journal. Do like a big mind map. Get like a whiteboard, a big poster board, and don't filter anything. Just write down anything and everything and mind map on it. But then also meditate on it. Don't feel rushed to actually absolutely make the decision. Like I said, start broad, but then meditate on it.
That's the hard part is, especially like if you're starting a new business, you're so excited, you're so anxious, you're just like, okay, I need this to start making money now so this can be my thing.
Yeah.
And we rush through these processes that we need to really just slow down.
100%.
Take your time. And then put it, like, trust that, like, you're going to have the rest of your life maybe to do this.
Exactly.
So why are you rushing through this such an important piece?
So true. Yeah. It's so true.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Stop right there.
Just stop. That's all you need. No, but then like once you start doing more of the mind mapping and journaling, then go and create a list of at least over 15 ideas that you could niche to. And then the second side to it is also be realistic. Like, are you actually skilled in this? And the thing is, if you're not, but you know you're like really excited about it, you can take courses. You know what I mean? You can do the thing, but you also have to be excited about it, because that's also adding another thing on top of building a business. And again, building a business is a lot of work. So there's so many running things with it. Then do you want to add a course on top of it? Right? Yeah. So then the next step, after you've created your little list of ideas, you're going to research your competition, see what they're doing. Is there someone already kind of in that niche? Because it is really, like, the thing is, it's hard to niche when someone else is doing the exact same thing, because then it's not really a niche anymore.
Right.
If someone else is doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if there's another wellness graphic designer out there in PEI, and I'm doing it too, that'd be so conflicting. And how do people choose between that?
Is it not a niche anymore just because someone else is doing it though? Like,
not necessarily. Like, I mean, in the sense of like a smaller community.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
If you're going global with it, then it's not. Yeah. I should clarify, but
I get what you mean. Because I think what gets me caught up a lot is I feel like ever since I became a leadership coach, that everywhere I turn, someone new is popping up. Here in PEI, even alone, that there's so many other leadership coaches, and I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, I didn't notice any of them before. But it's like when you buy a car and you don't see it anywhere, and then it's like that law of attraction too, I think a little bit. But then within being a leadership coach, like, okay, so what's my need? Like, how do I differentiate from all the other ones is what I'm now like
But then
really honing
that's
in on.
when your branding comes in, though. That's when, like, you're building that trust, you're building that awareness, you're positioning yourself away from those people that are now popping up.
Right.
As, you know what I mean? Because technically you probably have more experience right now. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, but like they might not even be still like figuring out their own niche.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're really focused on entrepreneur and leadership and stuff like that. But there's some people that just want to be just a life coach to moms. I keep going back to moms just so
like you got moms on your brain today.
Not with child.
Yeah.
But it's just
I know
that's
what you
a
mean.
really
Yeah, and conscious leadership being a strong niche for me too, because
Exactly.
Lisa and I are the only ones that are doing that we know of on the island right now.
Exactly.
We don't see those terms come up with anybody else. So.
Exactly. And like the thing is, yes, there is a chance like if you feel like you are an expert and you're really lit up about it and there is a competitor, I'm not saying don't do it. It's just I'm saying like again, if you're in a smaller place,
you just have to really
up your
work
messaging
that much harder, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Again, like it's this. The nice thing with niching is that it is supposed to make it easier on your head.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in the sense of like it's supposed to make it easier to define, but then if you're also adding on top of it like the competing aspect to it, it can get a little overwhelming.
Just a little
little overwhelming. And again, when you're an entrepreneur, you just kind of want to make everything as easy as possible, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's what it's all like. We're not here to work harder and make it more difficult.
Exactly.
I mean, unless you're...
Like, niching is supposed to make it easier, so we're not trying to make it harder.
Yeah. Got it. All right.
So
keep going.
Exactly. So the next thing you're going to want to do is see if there's a problem that you can solve that your competition may not be doing. And either add it to your list or also go through your list and say, is this a problem that's already been solved? Or is it a problem worth actually investing in? And then the next thing is that you also want to be honest with yourself. Like we mentioned earlier, are you choosing this just for the financial outcome of it? Is this something you are
it's not
actually...
all about the money.
Yeah, exactly. Are you actually an expert in or want to be an expert in? Are you going to be able to talk about it for over a year? You know what I mean? Can you do this in the long term? What are you able to be excited about it and wake up in the morning feeling super jazzed about it?
Yeah, like I get to do this all day long, every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then and then the next step, you're just going to want to test it. So validate that idea. And so often, like, we just kind of put things out there as business people, but validating the idea is so huge. So whether it's like doing a survey, a mini course, a product demo, if like you're niching towards a product, and then see like the actual live person feedback and to see if this is actually a problem. So for example, if you are a product-based business and you're selling a product, you don't want to spend like a shit ton of money creating that thing. Get a temporary and see if people actually like it. You know what I mean? Don't spend all that money developing. Exactly. Don't spend all that money just to say, I think people are going to like it.
And then are like, ooh.
Right?
No.
And that's the same kind of thing of like developing a niche. Like, are people actually looking for this? You know what I mean? Maybe guest blog post on someone else's website and write an article about that specific niche that you're doing if you're like a service-based business, and see if they either get clicks, people are interested and they're replying back to you, attach the survey to it.
Yeah.
Start putting feelers out there, even if especially if you're not rushing to do a niche.
Yes.
Right. So for example, if you are doing coaching and like you're just like super broad coaching, not really sure exactly where to go, put the feelers out. What gets the most traction of like what you're like, if you talk on live and so many people interacted with this topic more so than anything, you know?
Right. Then that could be like your key messaging and
Exactly. It's again, seeing what actually is working. You know, the numbers don't lie. You know, the feedback doesn't lie.
Don't lie. Facts are facts, right?
Exactly. And then from there, then you're going to have to, you know, do the thinking and wind down that 15 list. So like I usually tell people, take it step by step, eliminate slowly. Well, unless you're like feel confident to cross things off. And then eventually you should get down to at least 3 to 2, and then that's when you're going to have to make the tough decision of what is the one thing, or even how can you combine, maybe they complement each other in a way too. Right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Some other extra little tips I want to add to this as well. You're going to want to look at social media, which I think is a huge thing. So things like Facebook, they have a lot of groups on there, and you can actually see communities and see like how big certain communities are.
Right.
And those are super niched already, right? And like if there's a clear community and it doesn't look like there's someone doing exactly that, that might be a great one to look at, you know? And another thing too, like sometimes it's the most obvious, but ask from an outsider. So like if you're having trouble figuring out what exactly are you good at, like if you're starting from complete ground zero, it's like, I want to be a creative, but I don't really know what, you know what I mean? Ask those close to you and say, what do you think I'm good at? Is there something that you think I'm really good at? So, like, for example, a lot of people say that I'm good at cross-stitching. I'm not going to be a cross-stitcher by any means, but I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. So maybe perhaps I create cross-stitch patterns or something.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's, it would be close to what I do, but then also building something that I'm good at.
Yeah.
That could also be good. And then it would be even greater if they confirm something on your 15 list. Because then that's already
ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding,
yeah.
ding.
Highlight that one. Star, star, star.
Yeah.
And would you ask people that are like in your personal life, professional life, would you put that out to your social media channels? Like, who would you ask for that feedback?
If you're confident enough to bring it to like everyone, then definitely. But I'm also thinking of like mostly your close people. Like I ask my mom or like my dad or like people that know me heart and soul of like what I would like. Right. You know, like what makes me tick. You know, you could ask people that are outsiders, and like again, you can. It's just, do you want to? I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like, hey, what do you think about me?
It's a little vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I good at? You know, like it's kind of
yeah.
validate me right now.
Yeah. Please tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So feel free to pop some comments and tell us what we're good at now.
Yeah. Tell me what I'm good at, guys.
I need to know. Oh goodness. Yeah. No, there's a lot to that. I remember when I was working with a coach a couple of years ago, and that was something she actually had me do, was reach out to a bunch of close friends and ask like, what do you think my greatest strengths are, and
that's awesome.
Different things like that. I should actually pull that back out.
That'd be
look
good.
At it.
Yeah.
And just kind of see what still rings true or what lights me up, because like I find this particular episode is coming at a very interesting time, because I've been doing my certification and I'm trying to get myself ready to take on more clients, especially on the one-on-one. I've been doing like more of my group and my mini courses and things like that, and those are niched but a little broader, and like pulling in that one-on-one client is a little bit more technical and specific, and I want to make sure that the time I'm going to invest in marketing makes sense and I'm not doing this broad message. So I am in deep on the niche exploration right now, which is fun. And so I was excited to be doing this too, and just like bouncing some ideas off of you. And
definitely. And I feel like it might be even easier for you to niche because you do have a lot of moving parts, because it's not like you just have coaching.
Correct.
You also have the fishing. You also have all the boards you're on. You know what I mean? Like it'd be so much easier for you on the head to have a niche, because then, and that's another thing too, I actually wrote it down, but I also know that like for my self-care, I wonder how much better I'd feel having a specific niche, and how much easier that would be to market, and not have to be like, oh, who am I speaking to today when I create this advertisement?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what, you know, it'd be so much easier to have all that and like be confident and like, I know exactly who I'm talking to right now, or I know exactly where I'm going with certain things, you know, on certain projects.
Yeah.
And especially as I start creating more of my passive income and stuff like that, it would be so much easier to niche, you know? And like that could be for you as well to think about, that it would be much easier. And I know you're a little hesitant because you don't want to get bored, but
yeah,
I think like, I don't know, I feel like you already kind of have a niche without knowing it. And that's the thing too, there's a lot of people that actually on our Instagram poll said that they didn't niche, but then I'm like, you kind of do niche without realizing it.
Yeah.
You know what I
true.
mean? And I think that's like the most interesting part is it doesn't have to be super, super niche. Like you can have a niche without realizing you actually have a niche, which I think is interesting. Like if you have a specific clientele that always comes to you and you have like a specific, you probably have a niche without knowing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think we get in our heads, right? And we just overthink it, or we think, you know, it has to be done in this perfect particular way. But yeah, some people would naturally just stumble upon a niche and not realize it. And then some people would go through all of these steps that you shared with us and still have a hard time trying to narrow it down or pick it, right? Which is quite interesting too. But
yes, so the best niches are found when you're not trying to force it. I find. You know what I mean? Like, again, for example, why I want to do the wellness is because we've started to do the Thriving Tides podcast, and it's bringing me back to like when I was a yoga teacher. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. You know what I mean? And how great would it be that I could help people you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like that, even just thinking about that, I'm getting excited. Like I'm just like, oh, I have all these ideas. And I think so often we get scared of those ideas in a sense too, because they are scary. And as a Taurus, if you listen to our last episode, I'm scared of change. I like to control the things, and I can't control if people are going to identify with my new message, you know? And I always tell people it's really expensive to rebrand and change up your messaging, and you're going to lose some people. Are you ready to lose that comfort that you already have?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Even if it's not doing what you want it to do, but it's comfortable because you know it.
Exactly.
That's, you know, that's the scary part. Yeah, for sure. No, that's really interesting. But I love the energy that came up when you were like, I want to help people who help people. And like one of the notes that I was writing here too was a conversation I've been having a lot lately is about like living in your integrity. And this is one of the commitments of conscious leadership as well. And it's like if you're managing your energy, so if we're doing something that's out of alignment with our passion and our goals and whatnot, it's way more of like a swirly drain on our energy than if we're doing something that's fully aligned. So like, why wouldn't we niche to something that we're super excited about and that like, you know, just saying it out loud gets you like energized.
Exactly.
It's wild, right? And that makes me happy for you that you know that.
Yeah, like I'm not saying that I'm still
You're like, I'm not saying I'm gonna niche it.
Like again, it's like that's a whole, and that's the thing too. I think there's a lot of self-discovery that you have to do with that as well. And I think, I want to so badly, but it's just figuring out how to. And I think there's still so much I want to learn and develop. And what does that look like? Like, is that going to help with Thriving Tides? You know what I mean? Like, now I feel like I'd be more in line with Thriving Tides. What does Summer Street Creative now mean then? Do I have to get a new name? Like, does that... So there's a lot of moving factors that, yes, in my head, I'm like, I know exactly this would be so great. I know exactly how I would connect everything. And but do I build a new brand, or do I change Summer Street Creative, or you know what I mean? So it's kind of like a catch-22, because I've already have defined myself in my market. And I have a client base. So now I'm just going to go change it up. I'm successful. Now I'm going to change everything. Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's so
like me.
scary. Right? And it's funny because, like, I could go into, like, a whole spiral right now. And I think I used to be so much controlled by my fear and worry. And I'm like, if I feel this excited about it, I wonder what would happen if I just pursued it. You know, and if you're listening right now too, like, is there something that you've been kind of, it's always been on your brain, it's something that you always end up going back to anyway, and there's a specific kind of client type that you love working with, but you haven't taken the step? Maybe this is your calling to test it out. You know, put a couple that's another thing too. If you already have an established business, you could put a couple advertisements that are specifically niched and see if you get any hits on it. You know, like,
that's a cool approach.
Do a workshop that's specifically for one type of client. You know that they'd purchase that workshop ticket right away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a way to keep like that stable, comfortable, you know, this is here and it's working.
But then
you can do this other stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like that's what I'm doing right now. Like I'm still taking on clients.
Yeah.
Especially in the age of COVID. And that's another thing too. That's the other complete flip side of it. It's super scared to niche when there's a pandemic. You know, because like right now there's that scarcity mindset because of a pandemic. Like, do you really want to niche? But
right.
It's kind of, again, it's a catch-22. There's so many good sides and there's so many flip sides to both.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why we also had like very 50-50 results on our poll today too on Instagram. That there are some people that are like, yeah, I definitely do not niche. And then there's some people that are like, yeah, niche's the bomb.
Well, and depending on what you do, a niche may or may not be essential. Yeah. But a lot of us service-based folks, it really is.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. No, I feel re-inspired to really like sit down and do mine, and I'm looking forward to, now that I've just finished up my last course before I go into certification, which I'm taking a break until May to do that, because I want some space to absorb everything that I've learned. And even like I have this like pile of sticky notes on my desk right now of inspiration that was coming into my head of the type of people I want to work with while I was in my course. I was like, oh, this. And I didn't want to lose it or forget it. So have them all written down, and I have this like weird jumbled pile that
oh, that's amazing.
But it's exciting. And when you get into this zone and like into this focus, it's like, I just want there to be a day, and it'll probably be this weekend because that's me, where I just don't have any meetings, don't have any distractions or commitments, that I can just get lost in it.
Yeah.
Right. Like kind of get into that
wine,
zone and just
put music on and
go
just
for it. Light a few candles.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it, that's the thing, make it fun too. I think so people, like, again, we put so much pressure on it. That you're like, I need to get it done this weekend. Don't do that. Like, you're going to want to be all open and chill. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I'm like, ooh, I can like clear off my whiteboard and get all my different colored markers, or I can use different colored stickies. Like, you know, that's the nerd in me that is like, ooh, maybe I'll go to Staples and buy some new things.
Yes. 100%.
But it should be fun, because this is like planning what I'm going to want to do in the long term, right?
Exactly.
So if we make it a really annoying and frustrating chore,
then
we're going to keep putting it off, and then we're never going to get messaging that connects us to the people that we want to work with, and then we're not going to be happy.
Exactly. And again, it all goes back to self-care.
Yeah.
Make it easy for yourself. And again, it's also good for your clients. I still think it's like one of those things that it's just so much easier, because again, there's so many conflicting messaging out there, and it's it's hard on the head even as a consumer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And mixed messaging, and do I do this? When someone's clear, I will pay more for said product or service, because they're clear and I know exactly what I'm going to get.
Yep. Fair. When we're running our own businesses, like, it's really important to be managing our energy too, right? So I talked about that a little bit before too, but if we stay in this weird, like, swirling uncertainty, it's just like drain, and we're not going to want to show up, and we're not going to want to do any of it.
Yeah.
So find that pocket of time where you can get excited and niche in. I'm making up all the new terms. You're welcome.
I love it.
And ask for help if you need it, right? It can be really overwhelming. Like, Steph is a brand expert. This is what she does. And I remember sitting in front of you at the startup zone and being like, I don't know. And you're like, here's your worksheet. Like, go off and do it, right? But then to be able to come back to you and talk through it and whatnot. So, you know, whether you're able to hire an expert to help you, or you have someone in your network, entrepreneurship is a scary, lonely ride sometimes too. So don't feel that you have to do it all by yourself.
Exactly.
Ask for help when you need it, and take breaks when you need it. Don't put, like Steph said, like, don't put that pressure to like get it all done right away. be a little more expansive and know that like taking the time and doing it right is going to serve you so much better than just rushing through it and choosing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's niching.
Yeah.
I got my work cut out for me now. I got some work to do, guys.
But
I'm excited
for homework.
Yes.
And yeah, if you guys are interested in getting a customer profile sheet or anything like that, if you sign up to my email newsletter on summerstreetcreative.com, you can actually get a whole package, and I have a whole bunch of my worksheets because I'm a worksheet girl. And they're instant downloads, so you guys can totally go check those out, especially if you're trying to develop. And sometimes looking at your customer is a good way to start when you're looking at your niches. So definitely go download that if you guys would like.
Yeah. Super helpful.
Super helpful. Yeah.
I'm probably going to go do it again because this was almost 2 years ago now. So I've got some refreshing to do with Steph's worksheets.
Exactly. Yes. So with that being said, we're going to let you guys go get to niching.
Get to niching. I like it. And if you have a niche or you're working on a niche or this has kind of inspired you to get there, drop yours in the comments. We want to know what you're working on.
Yeah.
So until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
Follow us, Thriving Tides, on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.